first of all, I just want to say thank you all for coming. Thank you, Juliana, and thank you, Felisa, for helping me setting this up. And this is amazing. On the way here, I kept thinking about all the things that I'd like to discuss, how to start, where to start. So please, let's make this into a conversation. I'm not here to give you my resume out loud. But one thing I can tell you is that my main means of communication is paint on canvas. Usually I do this size, which is 60 by 48. It's either canvas or linen. And yes, I've been doing this for 10 years and I've been experimenting since. And I can, hey, what's up, man? How are you? Glad to see you. Sorry, they didn't expect any more people. I'm glad that you showed up. All right. We met on opening night. He's an artist as well. Mario.
Mario, nice to meet you, Brianna.
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay, so actually, I think I've been emailing you too. That's a different story.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? I started with Juliana. I emailed her 3 years ago.
Oh, really?
And then
yeah, no, because last day, the art walking in my student Fat Village, Judith sent me information, email you, and then I emailed you, and then I emailed you about a studio space here. So anyways,
Yes.
Which, by the way, they're great.
Because mine's closing.
Same way we talked about.
Fat Village, yeah.
Well, one thing I guess I'm thinking it could be interesting to you is learning about what my approach is, rather than talking about layers or like, of course there's layers what I do, but that's something. When I approach painting, it's in the same vein as when I approach music, and in a way, all these paintings are songs. And more specifically, if we refer to the title abstract punk, it's in the same sentiment of what punk music is about, which is raw and lawless. That's the same way I approach painting. I was having a conversation with Juliana earlier about rules and things that were taught to you on how to start a painting. For example, like gessoing the first layer. I'm sure you guys know all about that. Which is nice to have a conversation with other artists here. I think everybody here is an artist. I know Pam, you're a writer and a painter. You also are actually a great critique. How do you call it? A critiquer? Somebody critique. A critic.
Yeah, no.
How can I not
You
know the word?
words earlier.
Critic. Oh my God. I'm a critiquer. What is wrong with me? A critic. Jesus. Now when I get nervous, the Italian comes out, or I can't speak English anymore. All right, but anyway, everything you see here is deliberate. Along the way, sure, we have what Bob Ross calls happy accidents, which is great. He's a brilliant person, and that was his style, that's what he does, but along the way, when you're I'm always suspending mid-thought and action of having a conversation with myself. And a lot of this stuff is like an internal conversation, and the secret here is, for me, is when do you stop? When do you think it's finished? In the case of those paintings behind you, where I left the linen as the raw material that you can see, that's actually part of the painting as well. Some of the paintings that I do express a lot of gestural movements that can represent not anger or aggression, but they're violent in a way. But then other ones on the opposite side of the spectrum, they're very calming and soothing. So I go from one extreme to the other, really. There's no middle half measures with the way I approach things. It's either minimalist or very rich and chaotic. So, in a nutshell, that's how I can describe my approach. If I look at all of them together, the feeling is something that I for each piece I can reciprocate each time. And like each approach, I prepare ahead of time when I have a painting session. And I do usually 6 or 7 at the same time. I like to do that because I have an idea one after the other and you want to jot them down and you start creating. There is no way I can just have one canvas because then I'm limited to just being in that space and start and follow the tangent that I'm on. I want to go on multiple tangents. I mean, by nature, I am somebody, like randomness is my natural state. With the things that I think, with my sense of humor, the more absurd things are, the more I'm attracted to them. And I tend to gravitate. Also, in the same vein of how modern art was born, it's through experimentation. Like, why do we have modern art? Because people wanted to experiment. So, you know, you have surrealism, Dadaism, Cubism, Expressionism, and I started reflecting on what my style can be defined as, and that's why I call it abstract punk. Because you have obviously abstract and then punk in terms of punk music, which is always this relentless, raw, 3 riffs. As a matter of fact, let's talk about that. Punk music mainly has 3 main riffs, you know, if you think about some songs, 1, 2, 3, you know, same chord over and over again. But it's so energetic, so powerful, you don't need to layer it with more. So the same way when I'm listening to that music and I'm trying to do something on paint, with paint and on canvas, I try to reflect that feeling. And I think it comes through because the music stops, there's no music right now, but I can still hear it when I see the painting. At least me, you know what I mean? I don't want to sound like pretentious or coming up with this like, yeah, like you're here. But you know, to speak about a visual medium, I think, you know, one of the beautiful things I admire so much is writers, because they have the ability of really paint a picture with words. It's an amazing talent. I don't have that talent, and that's why I paint.
You're doing okay right now.
I'm doing okay right now, okay. Well, that's great. I'm glad I made some kind of sense. But this is something I love deeply. I'm always curious. I never run out of ideas, by the way. I'm never like, oh, what am I going to do today? No, there's always something to discover. You know, I get very excited about it each time. And each painting is one of a kind. I never want to repeat the same thing. I was talking as if it was 3 years ago. It was 5 minutes ago. I was talking to Juliana, and we were talking about formulaic paintings. You know, the way you approach a painting, where it creates a signature style, but it's the same thing over and over again. I'm not judging it. You can do whatever you want, whoever is doing it. But then at that point, where is the interest in that? Like, you're just sort of replicating the same shapes and forms, but with different colors. I'm not interested in that. Let's just say that. I'm not judging it. You can do whatever you want, but that's not what I'm on this journey for. And I still have a long ways to go. You know, I've been doing it, like I said, for 10 years. Who knows what I'll be doing in the next 10 years. And that's what gets me motivated and excited to keep going. And thank you to people like you who have supported me through the years, not only just by being a collector, but also, you know, just coming up with a critique. I remember when you post a lot of the critiques for the paintings that you choose, the one for the month, that I haven't seen that in a while, but I'm sure you'll pick that up again. Anyway, hey, what's up?
Hello.
How are you?
Good.
Were you just painting?
I was painting and moving my studio and like insane.
That's awesome.
I'm insane.
Didn't we talk on Instagram briefly?
We have, bought
Yeah, that's right. So
Yes,
I can see you
Tommaso,
with the
how
last
are
guy.
you?
Oh, no, thank you for coming. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, fabulous.
Well, anyway, I'm talking a lot, but let's do questions or things that you
Sure.
want to Please. Oh, no, thank you so much.
So you listen to music while you paint.
Absolutely, yes.
So I can imagine that music inspires you to
Absolutely.
start painting. But you say you do multiple paintings.
Yes.
So I guess you probably listened to one song for one painting.
Yeah. Well,
You couldn't go back and forth with the same.
no, that's a very cool question. Your thinking is true because it's a mix that I make. It's a 4 hours mix. Like I literally pick and choose each song from beginning. I create a journey. I've seen someone was like 13 years old, you know, making tape mixes with the stereo where you go play and record, whatever. So I create this journey. So the mood changes all the time. So I'm not sticking to one painting with the same song. Suddenly I'm working on one next song and it keeps changing my
Does the
mood.
next song make you move to another painting?
To move to another painting or still stay on the same painting and suddenly take a turn on what it is that I'm doing. I gotta say, there are some favorites that I have and then some that I don't like that much anymore. I'm not gonna say which ones they are, but and maybe it's because I'm very critical of what I'm doing and sometimes I decide to let go and see where that painting goes and it does its own thing. And to some people, they love it. I won't say anything, but in my head I'm thinking, oh God, there's so many things I want to change about it, and so many things I could have done better. So in a way, all of them are works in progress, but I decide to stop because I feel like they're indicative of something that I'm enjoying at that time. And with everything that I do, as time goes by, when I look back at what I'm doing, my God, it's like, sometimes I cringe. I'm like, I can't believe I did this, or I'm like, oh, I don't even want to see that ever again. I like all of these. I love all of these. It's some of, I think, my best work, I would say, and I still have not come up with a signature style where you kind of know if you look at one of these, you go, oh, that's a Fattovich painting. But I don't think that matters to me that much. I don't really care. I honestly gotta tell you, I keep doing my thing without really comparing or watching what other people are doing because that would drive me crazy. There are people that I admire and I want to be just like them, and then I gotta stop looking at what they're doing. I don't want to take anything from them or just feel like it could be overwhelming at times. I mean, this is a very fascinating industry and field to be in, but it's also very competitive. There's a whole side of this industry that can drive people out of it, you know? The competition, the dealing with the galleries and agents and all the back dealings that are going on. But that's for another conversation. I want to be positive. That's what it's all about. Ultimately, what is art to me, okay? It's about communication, sharing, and building bridges. I prepared this. But because I wanted to put some thought into this, you know? I don't want to just be here blabbering about colors and, like I said, just...
Are these from a few years?
Sorry?
The show, is it from a few different years?
Yes, well, okay. The pieces are a combination of 2021, 22 some, and I think that one's like 2019. But within 2019 to 2022. Yeah, the blue one over there.
So it's COVID, it's mostly the...
Yeah, oh, you know what? That's true. It was during mainly the COVID era. The COVID play.
Not that it affects artists that much in some certain ways, but...
Painting is the loneliest sport there is. I mean, I personally like to do it alone. I'm sure everybody here does. You can't just be chatting with somebody while you're painting. Some people maybe can't, but I need to be completely alone, in the zone. By the time I'm done, after I'm in the studio for like 8 hours, I'm like drenched in sweat, like I need to eat, I'm like just looking like crazy. People at the arts warehouse, I've seen that, and that's why I started going at night anyway, because that way nobody can see you.
That's great.
I hope I answered that question. I don't even know if I started going off on a different tangent, but please, do you have any other ones?
Well, you say you work in canvas and linen.
Mm-hmm.
What makes you decide to do linen?
That's
Which ones are linen?
The linen ones are the ones that have the material that is that brown color that you can still see, and also
Right.
you can probably feel the texture is different. I noticed that on linen, colors come through stronger, more vivid, and I love that look of that raw canvas, the raw material behind it.
Gorgeous.
I have been told, you gotta paint the whole canvas. That's a lot of people say that there's different waves of thought about how to approach painting the right way. I don't even know what that means. You really gotta let go of all these preconceived notions. Otherwise, you're restricting yourself. It is. Listen, I want to tell you, I did a painting I was so proud of from last year. I spray painted 6 lines of color. I forget the colors, but it's called the Pharmacist. Because it reminded me of this old pharmacies in the 50s, maybe more like a barber shop. You know that little barber shop thing like that? It had a feel of the soul. Anyway, so these lines, that was it. But it was canvas. There was primed, but I mean, without seeing that it's the threads on it. But I didn't paint over, so it's just these 6 lines of spray paint. It worked for me, and it ended up being a successful painting, in the sense that people loved it and somebody collected it. But people would be like, "That's it? Are you crazy? You just spray painted 6 lines?" But this is the thing, why not? That magenta, the oils and that. Is that magenta? I'm almost colorblind. I'm trying to, sometimes I can't tell the colors.
Magenta.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's spray paint, and then there's oil, and then there's the linen. All just these random things, and then there's the dripping that I like, and I try not to do that too much of the dripping, because I feel like sometimes that's a little bit of a cop out. There's a lot of just every time you do something that's the drip. A little by little, if some pieces deserve it, some pieces don't.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Really beautiful.
And then there's another thing I do. Speaking of technique, people always said, well, acrylic and oils don't mix. They do for me. I mean, I can mix them all the time. Yes, it takes forever for oils to dry, and sometimes they don't mix well to where it starts the acrylic starts peeling off and you have the oil underneath. But I like that, because then you take that chunk off and it creates another layer, and then it's a little dirty, it's a little messy, it's a little quote unquote shitty. I like when something's a little shitty, you know what I mean? It doesn't have to be perfect. It's one of the things that appeals to me. There's so many artists out there that I admire, that inspire me, like Taylor White, Sterling Ruby, Sebastian Edling, that I discover on the social media. It's the positive thing about social media is the fact that we get to discover all this beautiful art that otherwise you would not know about, right? And create this community. But then the overwhelming thing is that there's so many of us. There's so many of us. There's like 800,000 artists, I'm just one of them, but I tend to just kind of follow my vision and do my thing. I don't know where this is going, where it's leading to, but just you gotta live in the present and not overwhelm yourself with thinking, what's the end goal? And by the way, this is what I think. There's no finish line in this world that we're in. Like, it's not like you get a medal at the end, oh, I did it. No, this is a lifelong dedication to creating, and that's it. The reward would be, oh my God, being in a museum one day, that would be awesome. But really, it's about the conversation and inviting people to have this conversation about the works that you're producing. That's what it's all about. It's not like me telling you what it's about. A lot of the times, you tell me what it's about. I have my own conversation to make this, and then you tell me what you get out of it, That's just my philosophy about things. I'm thinking as I'm saying all this stuff. I didn't prepare this part, but it's an honest conversation that I'm having, without trying to be here and being pretentious or whatever. Yes.
I do have a question in regards to, I guess, everything that you've been talking about, but mainly the process that you use for painting. Like, I'm thinking, okay, if you say these are all work in progress,
Mm-hmm.
and music is a major factor in developing these?
Yeah.
Like, do you have some that you're like, okay, I'm done, I'm gonna put it away, and then you forget about it, and then 4 years after you show up and you're like, oh my god, this needs, like, how does your life impact within that time? Or do you just forget about it, you're done with it, and you start something new? Or do you ever go back and rethink based on what you learned within that time?
Absolutely.
Does that make sense? Like-
Of course, I know exactly what you mean. There are times where I put something away on the side and I revisit it later, not because I want to continue working on it, but because I'm like, oh, this worked just fine, and I discovered that way later. For example, I almost wanted to paint over this one, the middle one. So many times, I'm like, oh, I need something more, blah, blah. I learned to love it. For some reason, after a while, you're like, no, this works. Stop convincing yourself that things need to be changed. If you felt right the first time, follow your instinct, you're probably right. It worked the first time. Because then you have, obviously, family, friends, input from all kinds of people telling you what you should do. And that's another thing you gotta be able to navigate through. The division between your thoughts and the perception of other people's opinions, which I value very much. You know, I like to hear what people think. I mean, this is what it's all about, you know. But then don't let it influence you too much, because then you start driving yourself crazy. I tend to be a little OCD, so sometimes if my wife says she doesn't like it, then I get depressed. I go, okay, she doesn't like it, nobody else will like it. And I stop doing that, because I'm like, no, you know what, I'm gonna stand by what I think works, and it works. I mean, you gotta just listen to yourself, you know. But also, another thing that you brought up, I tend to start and finish the paintings within the time that I set for me to do them. I give myself like 5 days. And in those 5 days, I stay in this mood, because that mood and that energy will disappear. So I tend to stay within this timeline and create a set. I don't go then back and go, oh, this needs a little touch up, blah, blah, blah. I don't leave until they're done. And you know, it can be all night or during the day, the next day. I tend to have like a 48-hour period where the energy is there and I'm into it, and do what you can during that time. If I start a new session, that's a whole new set of paintings. I don't go back and touch them. I'm telling you, there's a certain mood and energy. That's why it's very ritualistic what I do. I need to prepare a month in advance, knowing that I will go, I call it getting in the pocket. Like musicians, when in the pocket, it means they're jamming, and the jam is going so good, and they're vibing, and they're in the pocket. So I use a lot of music analogies to this, and you know, all these disciplines are interrelated, you know, like writing, film, music, and in fact, I get inspiration from all this stuff. Sometimes you see people like Richie Culver, I don't know if you know who he is, but he just writes statements with spray paint on canvas. And some people go, what is this? I mean, he says some graphic things that are kind of shocking, but I don't think he does it for shock value. It's more like, it makes you think. So that's his style. On the spectrum of art, you have people that do something that's really busy, and then you go to that extreme where he's really minimalist, using words and spray paint, and he doesn't care to, you know, describe his process. I think the process is all there, it's just words, you know. I started inspired by that. The piece behind me called Of Major Importance, that kind of was inspired by what he does. If you look at what he does and this, they're completely different. And I don't even want to compare myself to him, because he's his own you know, entity and very successful and all that. But I try to experiment with one thing that has some kind of a word, and the play on this is that if it's so important, you should be able to see it, like you can't. It's being smashed in. So you can see all, and then maybe some of the hands of importance. So it's a play on words, like, you know, of major importance, but it's not that important because it's being smashed and destroyed. So that's one thing. Oh yeah, almost forget. Another fun thing to do, and I think it's the hardest one, is to do these little ones. That's what is it, 12 by 12? Yeah. That was for an Instagram contest where you had to create a 12 by 12 using your style, and I submitted that and they accepted it, but you know, there were so many different, it's so fascinating to see what people do on a 12 by 12. But it's the hardest because you can't really go too crazy because you cover it up, it'll be too messy. And I was able to do just enough. It's one of my favorites, Green Mountain Views. So I challenge myself to do these little ones. So it's easier when you have a larger canvas, I think. And that's why I don't do many of them. They're very hard to do, I think. With abstract, you know. Obviously I could paint a pretty bird or something and it works, but the whole point was to utilize my stuff. Yeah, and then you have the ones on this side. I'm sure you can see them. And I love how Juliana put them together because there's like a common denominator with these orange touches.
Yeah, they're gorgeous together. It's almost a triptych.
Yeah, right? And even the ones behind you are almost a triptych, and you know, two are linen, the one in the middle is not, but it works. And that's another fascinating thing, the way they're arranged kind of gave me a new outlook on these pieces too. Everything how you frame it in general just gives you a certain energy and for other people the perception that it all works, and you made it all work, Juliana, so I really appreciate that.
You did the hanging?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
She's a
Very
curator. Yeah.
Absolutely, it was awesome.
And I'm sure it brings your, like you said, your art to you see it in a new way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Depending on what's next to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Silly question.
Go on.
The music, does the music have words or is it all instrumental?
It's a combination of both.
Oh,
Sometimes, yes, I listen to Hans Zimmer, who makes soundtracks for Batman, you know, the Batman movies, and you hear this like awesome like orchestra. Then suddenly it goes into a punk song. Like it's just so sporadic and random that your moods keep switching. But then like you forget at some point what you're doing. You're so like in the zone and I feel like I'm levitating in a introspective way, and I gotta tell myself like I don't even go what color do I use next. I just see something on the floor, I grab it and I just smash it in. I heard a great quote. It said, "I paint like a barbarian because we live in barbarian times." And I wish I could tell you who said that. I forget. I just got a clip from somebody sent it to me. I thought it was great. I relate to that a lot.